he might feel how exhausted you are from work or taking care of the kids. And he might be, all right, love needs to happen. His masculine gift would be to create structure for love to happen. He might say, baby, here's a glass of wine. I drew you a bath. Go take a bath and then meet me in the bedroom in an hour. More often than not, when I say that to women, they'll be like, yeah, that would actually feel pretty good. So now you're in the bath and you're preparing, right? And so you're going to have to like find your body, like come out of maybe having to be in your head all day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it actually feels good to have my body. Like it feels good. I like my skin. I like the bath. It feels pleasurable. It feels good. And I love my husband, and I love that he is creating structure. And you find, like you said, you take 5 minutes to connect to the yearning in your heart and the pleasure in your body. And then your gift to him would be to bring that to him.
I believe that each and every one of us has the power within ourselves to create the life that we really want. And I want to help give you the tools to make that happen. I'm Danica Patrick, and I'm pretty intense. Today on the show is John Wineland. He is a teacher and speaker in the area of embodiment and intimacy. Yep, I said intimacy. It's such a topic that, we don't really talk about. Today, we didn't follow those rules, and we opened up about this topic that we could all do a better job of being more open and vulnerable about and communicating better about. And we just dove really deep into the topic of sex. So I hope you learned as much as I did. Enjoy the show. Thank you so much, John, for doing this interview. As I said when you came on, I'm like, I have so many questions. There's not enough time in the day for that. Your work is so fascinating. The masculine, feminine, sex, which is such a off limits, untouched topic, and you speak about it with such comfort. Like it's just like saying hello to somebody, it sounds like, and it's just really, really exciting because I love to learn. And so I can't wait to ask you questions about all of this, as it's all fascinating, even the masculine feminine, which is something, I've dealt with in my life. So, but what I want to know first before we jump in is first, I just kind of want to hear about where you came from. Where'd you grow up? What was your family like?
Let's see. So I'm a born and raised Angelino. Born in Pasadena, lived here pretty much all my life. My dad, like a lot of guys in my generation, my dad split when I was young. And so I was raised by all women. So I had my mother, my two sisters, my two stepsisters, my aunt, my great, it was just, I was the only guy. And so I did not learn, first of all, I didn't learn how a man operates in the world. Because my father was gone and my grandfather's died. So I didn't learn that stuff until I was much older. And when I was, late 20s, I met a group of guys. I got interested in men's groups. And I met a group of guys that really taught me everything that I learned, everything I needed to know about being a man. And I had a daughter, and my daughter lived 21 years. She's a beautiful soul, but she had cystic fibrosis, so she died. But those guys, and Claire was a very beautiful person. I don't know whether you know Claire's story, but she was a really incredible person. And so, so I've lived an incredible life. And I've been working in men's groups now for about 20 years, teaching men's work and teaching spiritual intimacy and yogic sexuality, which is part of what you were talking about. And it usually trips people up because I'm pretty much a regular dude, right? I surf. You wouldn't look at me and go yogic sexuality. So I like that. I like that I can kind of pass off, myself as being a pretty normal bloke. But I love what I do.
Conversations, you just kind of slip it in to see what someone's comfortable.
Yeah.
Or keep it on the surface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On planes and things like that. What do you do for a living? Oh, well, I teach people about sex and spirituality. So yeah, I've had just the most incredible life. I love my job and I love what I do, and I love to have conversations like this. So, my sincere hope is that I can be helpful to you and anybody who listens to us.
What was it that, and you already are, what was it that drew you to men's groups?
Well, I think it was just not having men in my life, like not having a
Mm.
father figure, right? And I come from a long line of hard drinking Irish alcoholics, so my grandfathers were gone pretty early, and yeah, are you Irish too?
My last name is Patrick.
Patrick, I was just thinking, yeah, Dempsey is my family, right? So, so yeah, I just had no like stable men in my life, and all women, and I didn't know how to do relationships. Like I didn't like, what does a man do other than like make some money and provide, fatherhood and some sperm, and like, what does a man do in this realm of relationship? And I learned pretty early on that I was going to have a really horrible experience with the feminine if I didn't learn how to show up as a man. So I found a guy that I thought was, wow, this guy, like, he knows what he's talking about. And he said, hey, I do a men's group and we meet every day. Sometimes we met every day for a while, but this has gone on now for 25 years. In fact, I was on with them right before I, got the text that I was supposed to meet with you. So yeah, it's just been such a big part of my life to have men's groups. And I'm a huge, like, the work that I do is to train guys to lead men's groups, because I think it's such a big structure that's needed for men today.
Why is that? What is what is
Yeah.
lacking that men's groups are really valuable?
That's a good question. I think what we're missing this century and last century really are the initiation rituals that took boys into manhood, right? And they used, well, you were raised, your father used to teach you what it was like to be a man, like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, living on the prairie, living in the plains, hunting for your own food.
Okay.
Like all of those things, you would learn from your father, or you'd learn from a group of men who were elders in a community. And once we moved into the industrial age, right, that those communities got broken up, right? And so starting at the end of the 19th century, like the initiation rituals, even if in indigenous, like if you look at Native Americans, right, there's a ritual that would take a boy into manhood, usually involved facing death in some way. It usually involved like hanging from a tree or getting bit by ants. Oh yeah, this stuff's all real. But for boys in the US and in the West, it was more about your dad teaching you how to be a man. Like, this is how you hunt, this is how you take care of a family, and this is how you make money, and here's what you do with money, and here's how you're a husband. And those things have been, over the course of the last 50 years, pretty much removed. Very, very few fathers do that. At least, I mean, there's some, but for the most part, you've got 3 generations of men now that have grown up fatherless.
So what was it that those activities and those lessons taught you that made you more of a man?
Right. Well, there's a certain capacity to, there's 2 pieces in particular that are about initiation. One is to be able to stay open, like literally feel open and not collapse in the face of discomfort.
Like your heart,
your body, your awareness, right? Literally to train. If I was training as a martial artist, let's say in the East, Japan or China, one of the things they trained me as a young boy is they trained me how to be in uncomfortable positions and stay completely aware, stay completely focused, right? I mean, you're an athlete, so right? To have that skill is a nervous system training. Is a nervous system training. And that nervous system training was actually ritualized in most societies. And so men's work nowadays is really about teaching men, after their puberty, obviously, but teaching men how to be in uncomfortable situations and stay open. So for example, a fight with your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Like
Right.
instead of
Right. Instead of collapsing, you train your nervous system to stay open, or work stress, or what we're dealing with now, for example, right? All of these things are pressures, stresses that men will, if they don't have the capacity to open, if they were never trained or never trained themselves, they will either numb, Reddit, right? Or they will collapse into some kind of numbing experience. So good men's work, that's the first thing, is to train your nervous system. And the second piece is to face death in some way. Yeah. And for many kids, this was about hunting. Like literally hunting was part of facing death. Like you killed something.
mm-hmm.
And through the 19th century, again, until the industrial age, that's what we did. So it's only like 100 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
And in the last 50 years, that's completely gone, unless your dad hunts and takes you out. But that's pretty rare, especially here in California. So facing death in some way, maybe could be an ego death. It could be like a death where you like literally reveal yourself in front of your community and they hold you.
Maybe the hardest one of all.
What's that?
Maybe the hardest one of all.
Yeah. So yeah, and so that's what I think men are missing, and that's one of the reasons why men kind of come to me is they feel like, hey, there's something in this road to masculine maturity or spiritual development or emotional development that I missed. More men raised by single mothers, God bless them, than ever. More men, more families divorced than ever. And so this trend is, and it leads, because I know this will be part of what we talk about, it leads to problems when you get married, when you come together and you want to start a family of your own.
What about from the female side of things, and how has that evolved over the last 100 years? And then maybe at the end of that, how does that collide or coincide with the way that the man has not been, as you described, not fully integrated into manhood through these activities and through these challenges?
Right. Well, I think there's something similar for women that they've experienced, which is whereas they learned about their feminine, right? They learned about their feminine, which is the part of them that is intuitive and flows. And so let me define this just so I don't, trip anybody up. So the feminine in all of us, in men and women, or however somebody identifies, is the part of us that longs for more, the part of us that wants life, the part of us that likes color, the part of us that, that wants food and children and puppies and parties and very like more. There's kind of a moreness to the feminine.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And the masculine in all of us is the part of us that wants to take the experience of life and focus it into something very sharp and directed and clear, right? And really like a race car driver, right? Perfect example of having to use a masculine capacity to, right? Or a golfer, and not that those women aren't feminine or in their essence, but they had to develop a masculine capacity. So the masculine in all of us is our capacity to literally take all of existence and hone it into a goal or a creation. And so the other piece of the masculine is that the masculine craves less. Yeah, whereas the feminine wants more. If you ask any guy like what he's looking for in his relationship or his home life, more often than not, it'll be something around peace.
Or less is more.
Less, like, can we just get along, or can we just have peace, or can everything just be cool? Or almost any guy that's not what the feminine is. The feminine is saying, can we have more love and have more connection and have more this, and right? And so in us, these two pieces, which are both totally natural and totally normal, the more identified with the moreness that a human being is, like wanting more and loving more and craving more, the more feminine identified they are. And it can change moment to moment, different periods of their life, where they're, whether they're, mothers, for example, or however that happens. And the more identified with just wanting to Like having a sharp goal is one thing. The only thing less than one thing, like putting it over the goal, right, is one, over the goal line is one thing. It's one goal, get it over the goal line. The only thing less than one thing is no thing, like just nothing. So the masculine in all of us is the part of us that wants total peace, that wants to relax into nothingness. And if you zoom out and you think about the universe, this is how the universe is created. There's energy, and then there's space, there's nothingness. So if we went down to the essence of an atom, there would be the energy of the quarks and everything moving, and then there'd be this space, this empty space in between. And so the universe is literally made up of emptiness and energy. So are we. And so when you bring those things together, you have, in the relational world, you have sexual polarity. So when one partner animates the part of them that is feminine, wanting more flow, love, and one animates the part that is depth and consciousness and nothing, and they come together, there's an arc of sexual energy that gets created. And that's the essence of sexual yoga. So to your question, what does that make sense thus far?
Yeah, yes, it does. And within all of the things that you were saying, I can also, and tell me if I'm wrong, but there also feels like there's duality within each one. Like if a woman wants more, like it seems like if that's the feminine, but then you go get it, that's masculine, right? So if you want more, like, so constant contrast.
Right.
So finding the balance is like, oh.
Right. Well, and the difference is that, and this is part of your original question, what's changed for women? So what's changed for women are the same thing, where there's not as much rural sort of feminizing, like celebration of the feminine for young girls, right? There's less of that. Or if there is, it's also been, feminism in the 70s, 60s and 70s actually told women, hey, it's time to compete with men, you should be in the same arena as men, right? You learned this, obviously. And so we're going to go do this, and it's great, and it probably hundreds of years too late. However, that same skill set of learning to drive and compete and go get it actually is antithetical in the area of polarity and relationship. And this is where women and men are having this disconnect. So the more a woman is directional with her masculine partner, assuming her partner's masculine, the less space he has to be directional. So she's now in the masculine and he's now following, which is fine, except it tends to impact their sexual chemistry. It tends to mess up their chemistry. And so women who are completely capable of leading in every area of their life will often use the skill sets they've learned to deal with the issues of relationship, the issues of not getting met or not being seen or not feeling safe. And that actually tends to make things worse. And so we have this, now we're in this space of relationship where women are often better men than men. Women are often better equipped in the masculine than men who've been raised without men. And so they lead better, they direct better. And even though this is often really good in life, parenthood, that kind of thing, it doesn't necessarily work in the sexual realm.
We're going to get there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's like the for sure most important thing that I want to talk about. But before we get there, I feel like there's like a base to it. There's got to be an understanding within yourself and then within the relationship, and then you can enter into how that looks in intimacy. So the curiosity I have is first stepping back and going, okay, how can I'll use myself as an example, because for sure, I think that in my life, I have had to cultivate so much masculinity. And so one of the things that I've been working on over the last year or so, really intensely is to try and soften and try and be more feminine and be less like cold, directional, go do this, making decisions, like all things that I'm very good at, but I practiced it for 25 years. So, I find myself stepping away from racing and being retired and, in a relationship where my partner is very masculine. And I can see what you're saying now about the masculine being like less, because he's very like, it's very relaxed. And so there almost appears to be a femininity to it because it's almost like a passiveness.
Right.
But I'm understanding now, just so masculine that my masculinity, like we just like, there's clashing.
Yeah.
So how can one, I just want people to know that like, this is
normal. This is normal in modern relationships because so many women are like you, incredibly successful, incredibly like accomplished in the world, and yet your essence is feminine. You'd probably prefer to be ravished and led and taken care of and cherished. Well, that just means you have a feminine essence, sexually at least, right? And relationally. So yeah, so what I try to teach people is that yes, we both have both. And so the first step is to get aware of what area needs to be strengthened. Kind of like what you talked about, like, okay, like I've spent all this time working to be directional and goal-centered and meticulous. Like you have to I don't know anything about driving race cars, but I imagine the level of meticulousness is off the charts, right? And so you go from that to being the best way to describe just the essence of feminine practice is the embodiment of pleasure and love. Right. So the pleasure. Yeah. So pleasure. So the more that you can conduct. So if we think about masculinity and femininity as transmissions, right? Like, so as a transmission of femininity, I could do this too in my body. I could start to move in a way where love starts to flow through my fingers or flow through my eyes or my hips. And I could literally transmit love and energy through my body. The more I'm doing that, the more femininity I'm transmitting.
And by transmitting, you mean embodying that feeling so that it's literally coming out of your body as an energetic field.
Exactly. Right? People feel like, people feel like, who's a great example of Beyonce, right? If you saw the Beyonce Coachella piece where she did all these costumes and all, it's the essence of what people are paying for. What they're really wanting is it's the feminine, fully embodied, fully expressed in song and dance and movement and more, right? This is why she got paid what she got paid. So the more that I'm connected to pleasure and love, the more I'm connected to the feminine, the universal feminine. The more I'm connected to depth and sort of the infinite consciousness, the more I'm connected to the masculine. Now, the more you can feel that through me, the more I'm perceived as masculine. So let me give a little bit. I'll step back. Yeah, let me step back. So the masculine in all of us is the part of us that has never changed. So you can feel the part of you, Danica, now, and Danica at 5. And there's a sameness, right? It's the same you, even though your cells have changed, your habits have changed, everything's changed. Your whole life has happened since then. And same with me, the part of me that is unchanging and infinite, right? Some people would call it God. Some people, whatever, people have different words for it. So there's the part of me that's unchanging and infinite. That is our masculine. The part of me that's always changing, the part of the moment that's always changing, is the feminine. So in any moment, or let's stay with people. In you, there's a part of you that's unchanging and totally still, and totally infinite. Like you can feel that. And yet there's everything that's moving. Like you're hearing my voice, you're feeling the sensation in your body. There's things going on in the room around you. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is the essence of a masculine energy and a feminine energy. Now, the more that you're transmitting that infinite stillness through your body, the more you will be perceived and felt by people around you as masculine. Does that make sense? Is that a little clearer? So if you walked into a room, it doesn't matter, woman, it doesn't matter. Like you could walk into a room like still and present and walk
Mm-hmm.
into the room like very solid, like
Mm-hmm.
like a tree, and people would feel your masculinity.
That be
And
like your essence then? Because to me,
no,
no? Is that
well, they're both. So whichever you relate to more is your essence. Wherever feels like home to you.
Hmm.
Yeah. So some people have like, if you feel, I mean, we could go down the rabbit hole here, but some people will have feminine minds and masculine minds. Some people could have feminine emotional bodies or masculine emotional bodies, right? Like some of us like feel a lot, and that's a feminine emotional body. Some of us are kind of dense emotionally, men or women, tends to be a lot of men, and doesn't mean they can't feel, but it's just not, they don't have a feminine emotional body. So, but for the sake of simplicity, because I don't want to lose people here, if we just think about masculinity and femininity as transmissions that happen through our bodies. So our body's like the radio antenna or the transmitter.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more that your body relaxes and softens and opens and flows with love and pleasure, the cleaner your transmission of your feminine. The more my body is solid and clear and still, right? The more the transmission I have is of the masculine. And we don't necessarily recognize that we have agency over choosing when and where and how to use both of those aspects of ourselves. So a big piece of the work that I do is to work with couples and to talk about, okay, like if he's moving a lot, it's probably not very sexy, right? You're probably not going like, oh, okay, baby, all right, that's great. I'm glad you can dance. But if he's still and solid and looking at you very deeply and breathing very deeply and like rooted, that feels like something you could bring your feminine to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Or if he was moving and like making lots of sound, you probably would not feel comfortable bringing your deep feminine surrender to that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can feel the essence of that, or the feeling of that, feeling like the steadiness of a man, like the steady, just like, of reliability, the dependability, the strength, the confidence versus like a busy bee, like a kid almost like.
Right. Or it's like he's an oak. Like an oak tree or a rock, or like those are, we don't really take the time to take, to really examine what that means. What that means is there's a solidity, there's a groundedness. Somebody in that state is transmitting their masculine, right? Whereas a woman, for instance, who's feeling really good in her body, like who just feels pleasure in her body and is moving as pleasure, whether it's in dance or just walking through right? She's just feeling the ocean in her hips and the stars in her sky. I mean, poets have been talking about this for generations, right? So the more she's transmitting that, the more attractive to him she will be in a moment.
So am I understanding this right, that let's fast forward now to being like in that relationship dynamic, and what if you want to, like, what is the grounds to spark intimacy? Like, what creates the table set and ready to go? What I'm hearing is that the masculine is steady and calm and, not moving around so much. And the woman is a little bit more in flow and moving and doing and being. Is that correct?
Well, it's often presented that way through the body, but it's not like a guy has to be rigid.
Mm-hmm.
He could move, but he's moving from depth, let's call it, right? So that place that we talked about, that interconnected, so the essence of masculine practice as I teach it, right? This is how I teach men, is to connect to tether to the part of you that is infinite and unchanging, and then use breath and use your body to use breath to ground and open your body. And from there, move. From there, kiss her. From there, start a sexual moment. From there, lead her into the bedroom. That's a difference that sounds esoteric, but you can feel it. And if I put you in, if I did that in front of a room full of women, they would feel it. And so that's what we do at workshops, right? It becomes so obvious when you actually see it. You're like, okay, would you trust this more? Right? So would you, for your feminine, for you to surrender your heart deeply and fully to the man you love, you have to trust him, not just in life, but moment to moment, right? So not only do you have to trust him as he leads his life in your life, but in the moment, you have to trust him. In the moment, you're looking for that solidity. And you're looking for, and now this can switch. It can, he could be he could be totally flowing and completely, he could be a hot mess, right? Not know what to do, not have anywhere to go. Like, baby, I don't know what to do. You lead us tonight. I've been working all weekend. I've been, you know what I mean? Like, and it can switch and it can become a very beautiful moment that way. But by and large, most men and women still fall into these lines of, if you're feminine essence, you want to trust your masculine partner completely. And to do that, he has to have a trustable structure, which is his body and his breath and his awareness.
A structure that he's trusting, or one that you?
No, well, both. Like, you could feel it, right? So if we take a moment, right? Because you said, like, let's talk about the sexual moment. So let's just take a moment. Like, you're in the kitchen and you're making dinner, mm-hmm. and your husband walks in, and he walks in. He's skipping walking in because he's just so happy about something, or he's like really excited about something. Chances of that turning into a sexual moment, probably not great. Mm-hmm. But if he walks in, like we talked about, very solid, connected to this core of himself, like literally where you could, like, he walks in and you feel depth. You feel it in your nervous system. And your nervous system can then wow, he's fucking solid right now. And maybe he steps behind you and he takes a breath with you. Mm-hmm. Right? He has now created a structure with his body, his breath, and his awareness for you to relax into. That now, if in that moment it feels good and you sigh, you've now brought energy to his structure. Like, if he comes behind you and he takes a deep breath and he puts his arms on, on either side of you, he creates this structure. I'm just giving one of millions of examples. And he breathes with you and feels good, and you sigh and kind of just snuggle into him. Mm-hmm. You've given energy to that moment. Mm. He's brought structure. You've brought energy. Now you're in a polarized moment. And so the more energy you bring and the more depth and structure he brings, the deeper the polarity that can be created. And we have what's known as, really beautiful sex, really hot sex. Mm-hmm. Really kind of juicy spark, if you want to take it out of the sexual.
So there's like a building process in the beginning. There's like the engagement, and then there's like the reciprocation of what's going on, meeting at that calm sort of emotional body level of like validation almost, right?
I would call it response. Okay. Response, like you're responding to his depth. Like he's coming in, and so the masculine value is that my consciousness is free. Like you can feel the depth of my connection to the infinite truth of life in my body and in my aura, I guess, if you want to use that word. But you can feel it. It's physical. It's tangible. Mm-hmm. And so you can feel the depth in me. And when you feel that in me and you're my romantic partner, chances are it's going to feel good
Mm-hmm.
And so if you just let your body respond with the energy that's wanting to come through you,
Mm-hmm.
it's the feminine gift. So the feminine gift is the responsive energy to consciousness and depth.
Mm.
Right. And then it becomes a dance. And like the more energy you bring, the more present he gets, the more fierce he gets, the more, penetrative with his gaze he gets, the more his attention just comes like on you.
Mm.
And then it becomes a cycle that can, elevate forever,
Yeah.
yeah, for,
Yeah.
hours and hours.
I can see that. I can see, I mean, that is good to me. Like for a man out there listening, that's good instruction of how to start, right? How to begin the process, and then for what the woman does after. Now let's flip the roles.
Mm-hmm.
And what would a woman do to sort of initiate or start that energetic exchange process?
Mm. Same rules. Let's just call the moment a blank slate. Like the moment's a blank slate. He could be watching TV. He could be cooking dinner. He could be sitting outside. And the moment is this blank slate. And so if you come to the moment and you bring energy that occurs to his nervous system as enlivening, nourishing, pleasurable energy, then you've now brought the energy to the moment, right? And he will likely, unless he's just totally distracted, he will likely take a deep breath. He won't even know he did this. He'll look at you, right? Because you've now got his attention, and he'll take his awareness, literally his awareness, his consciousness, and he'll place it on you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so you've now sparked that moment just by bringing. Now, who knows? It's your art, right? So it could be you sit next to him and you start twirling your hair.
Mm-hmm.
It could be like, what are you reading? Right? And whatever it is, it could be you kind of sashay next to him and let him feel your hips. It could be anything. It could be just like you purr at him. All of that is energy. And what I see, I lead lots of workshops, and what I see is that men are craving energy from the feminine, craving it. It's why they watch porn. It's why they, it's why they get attracted to certain kinds of women, because in this incredible feminist revolution, which again, I'm a huge fan of. Y'all can't take over the planet fast enough for me, but there's a certain level of energetic repression that happened culturally, if you know what I mean. And so women are less apt to reveal the truth of their heart. They're more fearful to reveal their kind of giddiness or their pleasure or their, some of it's because men have not treated them well, and that's totally legit. But in a romantic relationship, that energy is the gift. It's literally like food for his heart.
This to me sounds like there's a lot that has to do with it's like the mind heart connection of saying, okay, I want to be intimate, and then you kind of like, you'd have to really feel it. You can't just go, let's have sex and I'm gonna come
Right.
over and I'm gonna kiss your neck and then we're gonna do. It's like you gotta.
Right.
It's almost like that actually doesn't work. It's about how is it sitting like in your heart space and in your stomach, like your whole body? Is it you like bringing in that yearning, like that true feeling, and then when you approach like the field, like as we talked about at the beginning, that energetic field that you're now projecting out hits them, and then you do something and then it starts going. Like it almost feels like there's a first part that has to happen versus an action. It's more of an embodiment. You said the word embodiment at the beginning, but is right?
Yeah, no, you're getting it. You're absolutely right. And so the first part of becoming let's call it an artist or practitioner in yogic intimacy, let's say, or the art of intimacy, is that you have to develop your own practice. So part of your practice, if you came to me and said, hey, I want to learn to deepen in my feminine, then you would come to a woman's workshop and we would work on connecting to all of these different parts of your heart and then expressing them through the body. So you'd learn literally to open the channels that take you from the part of you that is sorceress, the part of you that is seductress, the part of you that is queen, the part of you that is innocent, the part of you, like the whole spectrum of your feminine, which is infinite, but falling snow, you know, full moon, like all of it is in a feminine body, right? It's all in a feminine body. And so you would learn as an artist of love to embody those things. And then you could get really good at turning it on pretty quickly. Like, I would imagine that when you had to get into a race car, right, there was a lot of preparation and you had to embody a certain level of, right? And at one point, I imagine you could get there pretty quick. If somebody said,
it as a light switch, I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's not you go shake hands, you take pictures of people, you mingle. Hi,
mm-hmm.
nice to meet you. Oh, a kid. Oh, and then you get in the car and.
Same thing. Just you practiced it thousands of times, right? And so it's the same thing, right? The thousands of hours that to practice all of these various textures, let's call them, of the feminine, takes some work. Unless you were raised that way, unless you were raised with sisters or a mother or in a group of women that celebrated all of those things and gave you lots of permission, which a lot of women don't have. A lot of women were shut down for that, at least in the last few generations. So yeah, you work on it and you get really good at it. And then just like you said, you're like, okay, we need to take care of business. Like, it's been a while, or he's very stressed, or we need to connect, or you can just feel that love needs to happen. Love needs to happen. And then you can be, okay, you may not even want to per se. It might not even be your thing. Like, you might be like, okay, I'm tired. I could really, do you have kids?
Yeah.
No. Okay. So for a lot of mothers, like, this is the issue. Like, I'm not sure I want to, like, I'm fucking exhausted. But love needs to happen for the relationship. Right. And so they turn it on but the one thing I want to make sure is super clear. It's done from love. It's not done out of obligation. It's done because of its devotion to love. And he might do the same thing. He might come home and he might feel how exhausted you are from work or taking care of the kids or anything like that. And he might be, all right, love needs to happen. So if he feels that, his masculine gift would be to create structure for love to happen. So he's creating the structure. His responsibility is to create the structure. So he might say, baby, here's a glass of wine. I drew you a bath. Go take a bath and then meet me in the bedroom in an hour. He's given you structure, right? And, you know, more often than not, when I say that to women, they'll be like, yeah, that would actually feel pretty good. Right. And so he's given the structure. So now you're in the bath and you're preparing, right? And so you're going to have to, like, find your body, like, come out of maybe having to be in your head all day. Oh yeah, it actually feels good to have my body. Like, it feels good. I like my skin. I like the bath. It feels pleasurable. It feels good. And oh, I love my husband, and I love that he is creating structure. And you find, like you said, you take 5 minutes to connect to the yearning in your heart and the pleasure in your body. And then your gift to him would be to bring that to him. And then the sexual encounter should be more and more of that on each side.
Now, is this something, again, I keep going back and forth, but can a woman do the same thing? Or is there a conflict in the masculinity and femininity of engaging and bringing about the sort of want to connect and to be intimate? It's a time for love. Yeah. Can a woman do that too?
Yeah, it just requires a little awareness, right? So part of what I'm trying to teach people is that in the modern world now, everybody's very fluid, you know? There's so much fluidity, especially younger people, right? So 30 and younger, there's much more fluidity. in terms of feminine and masculine energies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to notice it. I was talking to a woman a couple days ago. Her husband's a big hedge fund, owns a big hedge fund. But so he's very much in his masculine all day long. When he comes home, he does not want to be holding space for anything. He's like, okay, screw this. Like, how can I just like let go of all structure? I sometimes feel that way after teaching a long weekend. And so my partner, she's like, oh, there he is. That's a feminine through his masculine body. It's just exhaustion and can't make a decision and doesn't really know where to go or what to do. She could then say, okay, baby, there's a bath. I put some Epsom salt in the bath for you. Take a bath and then come and join me. You know, or I'll have dinner, or you have dinner, whatever food, you bring him food, whatever gift of devotion you do, you can take the lead because you recognize that he's in his feminine. Right? And so oftentimes what will happen is it'll just create a space for things to return back to equilibrium, where he'll be in the bath and he'll kind of come back into like, okay, he'll find his masculine again. It's not going to be there he's not going to be in his feminine forever, and vice versa. So it's a matter of recognizing where your partner is and having a wide enough skill set to bring what they need for, because again, the only rule that I would give is what serves love. You know, it's not like you always have to be in your feminine and he always has to be in his masculine or vice versa. It's every moment is different. Every moment is fresh. And if we can develop the skill sets to bring different parts of ourselves in service of love, things just flow more easily. There's just more love, less fighting, you know.
Do you think that, is there just a widespread apprehension, do you think, for men to go ahead and say, like, I'm just tired, like, you take over? Like, you say that and I'm thinking,
would you ever do that?
Men do that?
Well, if they know that they can, I'd say you're right. They don't. Well, yeah, I think they think that they have to always keep it together. They can't admit that they're just fucking spent. Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know if I could cuss on your podcast, but yeah, that they're just spent and they're just done. And many of them have a hard time, especially to a woman that they love. Like there's still this sort of weakness to it. And also, so what happens is they try to man up through their exhaustion and they do a shit job of it. And that doesn't feel good to you, right? Doesn't feel good to him. He gets more exhausted because he hasn't fully relaxed, right? And all of this can be avoided if we just start to understand more the ebbs and flows of our masculine, feminine as they move through our bodies.
So how do we get to that place? Because I think this whole subject in general is like when I bring it up, it's like, oh God, here I go. You know, like you just don't ever, it's just like not a topic that you barely bring up in a relationship, let alone on a public platform and, you know, having people gazing into each other's eyes in a group. I mean, that's just, I love it. I think it's something that's so needed and, you know, so normal and natural. But yeah, it just, I mean, how do you get to that point where you both understand each other and you both like, what's the conversation you have? Say we don't talk about masculine and femininity at all. We don't talk about sexual energy. We don't talk about sex. What do we do?
Okay. So give me a little bit more of an example, like a moment where you'd want to bring this into conversation, or you know somebody that might want to bring it into conversation.
Yeah. Because I just know everyone's sexual histories. Well, I just mean like, what if there's a yearning to improve intimacy? Right. And like, what do you say? When do you say it and how do you say it? Where you're like, let's learn how to do this better.
Right. So it's very tricky if your partner is masculine for you to bring that. I get this question all the time. it shows up where women will tag their partners on my Instagram posts, like, right, or buy this book or that kind of thing, right? Basically what they're saying is they're taking the directional space, they're using their masculine, they're using direction to address this issue of wanting more love and connection, because you, as a feminine essence being, which you are, will never have enough love and connection. There can always be more. It could always be richer. It could always be deeper. It could always, and it's fucking beautiful. That's the beauty of the feminine, is that more love is always possible. And it's always, there's a part of our hearts, that my heart too, that always wants that. The masculine has the same feeling about freedom. Freedom from demand, you know what I'm saying, right? Freedom from demand. Freedom is freedom from, freedom from demand, really. That's the big thing, right? So you've got these two kind of polarities that are already at odds a little bit, right? And I think we just need to acknowledge that, because it's humorous that, God set it up that way. But the masculine is just always craving more freedom, and the feminine is always craving more connection. And so if you are a feminine being and you're having this impulse for more love, then the way to do it is to just amplify. So it's not that it's your responsibility at all, but you're going to be more predisposed to wanting it than him. If he's masculine, he's going to be less interested in the relating, not you. I'm sure he loves you to death, would die for you, right? But he's going to be less interested in the relating than you, because your essence is you're a love-driven being by nature. And so you've got the masculine predilection for freedom, which often shows up as watching TV or zoning out in some way, games. It's like zoning out in some way. So you have to be more, the pleasure and radiance and sweetness and devotion that comes through your body has to be more magnetic than the pull to the football game. Which in your case might be kind of hard, right? Given it is. But yes, but in general though, it's like, what's better than nothingness? And it is the sweetness of devotion and pleasure. Like, that's probably the only thing to a masculine being that is better than nothingness, than freedom, than freedom from demand, is the essence of love purely transmitted through a feminine body. And so the disconnect in a lot of relationships I see is that most women will bring that desire for more connection through through words or through requests, right? Or through, right? Which occurs to the masculine as something more to do. Oh shit. All right. We've got to go to a workshop now. I've got to read that book now. And it's just not, and they probably will because they love you, but it's not their natural, it's not the natural thing that their soul would be yearning for, if you know what I mean. Does this all make sense? Because this is a big concept.
No, it is. And I think that what I'm always trying to give people and myself is, maybe this is my masculinity, is like, what do I do? Like,
right.
What do I do? What do we do? What does someone do to address it, to want to make it so comfortable? Like, I mean, I'm thinking of words like vulnerability, and how do you get to that? Like, what is the first thing you say, and then what do you do?
Well, I would switch it. So because I get you want to give people this, and it's great. So for the feminine, for any women watching who are feminine identified, if you're wanting to spark more interest in relationship with your masculine partner, the way to do it is through a way of being. It's through the way of being. Like, can you be softer? Can you be more filled with pleasure? Can you be more, and oftentimes just the amplification of your own juiciness. Put it right.
Back to that feeling, right? It's back to that feeling.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. The feeling and the pleasure.
Yeah.
Okay, the secret sauce is the yearning in your heart
Yeah.
for more connection, like that never quenched thirst for just more depth and more connection.
Mm-hmm.
And the pleasure in your body of just how good it feels to be in a feminine body.
Mm-hmm.
He does not have that. He does not have pleasure in his body. Almost no men have pleasure in their, like the way you guys do. Our bodies ache. Our bodies are like clunky. Our bodies are like, so the capacity for pleasure and softness that the I'm going to say female body has, the male body has much less of it, because for tens of thousands of years, we had to kill. We had to kill to eat. We had to kill to survive. And so our bodies had to be denser, stronger, denser, less feeling, because we had to kill another human being or kill an animal, or right. And this is only 200 years that we haven't been doing this out of 100,000 years of evolution. So our bodies still have that. And so your pleasure, your energy is like food for it. It becomes like just nourishment. So that is more interesting than the football game. Yeah. And it's an art, Danica, right? Every woman's got her own, every man too. I mean, it doesn't matter. You've got your own style of, like I said, he might be watching TV and you come up and you purr, or you stroke his legs and you just like, I missed you or whatever. And he'll be like, oh, and you just kind of like stay and you just kind of cuddle and you let him feel the devotion to him or to love through your body. And, like you said, that's a skill set as important as any professional skill set that we develop, if not more, right? In my opinion.
So is it safe to say then that the feminine energy is a little bit more of an action, a little bit more of an embodied feeling and emotion, and then transmission? Again, all these words you said right at the beginning, but just like, so, and then on the other side of it, the masculinity is the sitting back, relaxing, the nothingness. Like there's almost maybe less action or less transmission of the masculine and more, it's funny, you're getting to your masculine by relaxing, you're getting to your feminine by doing something.
Well, there's a relaxation in anything. Again, if we went back to your profession, right? You were probably best when you were relaxed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so same thing, right? So, but to get really good, now let's say I was a martial artist. Let's take, if I'm a martial artist and I'm practicing, right? And I have thousands of hours I have to practice. And but the first hour or first 10 hours or first 100 hours, I'm thinking, block, throw, block. I'm thinking, and I'm getting my body used to the action. By the time that I'm into 200, 300, 400 hours of practice, it's just happening naturally. And now I'm not just doing the form, but I'm bringing my art to the form. Right. And so this is part of the thing. I mean, this is why I have a job, because I'm the guy who teaches you the form. And I'm the guy who says, okay, like let him feel how much love can just come through this hand. And I'm telling you, a lot of love can come through that hand, and he'll feel it. He'll be like, whoa. And he'll like feel you deeper, and you'll be crying, and he'll be feeling those tears through your fingertips. And it becomes a thing. So what I think most people miss in this, and I'm so glad you asked about it, which is that it all starts with our personal practices. And we should all have we should dedicate some personal practice. Men and women should dedicate some kind of yogic practice or meditative practice to our capacities to amplify and animate our masculine and feminine. And most guys will get that. Most women get it fast. Men take a little bit longer.
I think that this is a great way to kind of bring it all together. There's one like pending question that I really thought was the most important thing out of just pure curiosity. That I want to ask, but then I want you to go into what does that mean? Like, what are those practices? Maybe sharing your own practices. But what can we do to cultivate that within ourselves and to get into that practice of becoming aware of our body and how we transmit energy and how we embody the feeling and then transmit the energy.
Yeah.
But
it would help if I gave one practice for the men listening and one practice for the women listening.
yeah, that would be great. But the question I'm curious about is, is there just defined roles in a relationship? Like, is there just like the man does this, the woman does this, or does the male identifying partner do this, and does the female identifying partner do this? Is there just like a base structure to the relationship that is just the way that humans work?
Right. The short answer is no, and everybody gets to choose. Everybody gets to choose what they want. We're at this amazing point in history where we don't need each other to survive anymore. You don't need your husband to survive, right? You could have children on your own. You could make your own money. You could, right? 100, 200 years ago, it was not like that. So we're at this point now, for the first time in history. It's really remarkable when we think about it. We don't need each other to create offspring, to work the farm, or to, for security. So you're not, murdered or raped. I mean, at least in the Western world, there's still parts of the world where this is an issue. But for most of the Western world, we don't need each other for the same reasons we have for tens of thousands of years. So this is new, really new. And so that means we get to choose, why do I want to be in a relationship at all? Like, why do I want to get married? Or why would I want to devote my life to this human being or a human being? And that's a really important inquiry I think everybody should step into before they decide. And then, why would anybody, this is the one that everybody has problems with, why would somebody want to be in relationship with me? Like, why am I, what is my value? Both my value is either a masculine or feminine identified human being, just as both, as a very, totally complete whole human being, because everybody should cultivate their masculine and feminine. And that's wholeness. That's really important that they get that. That's wholeness. And so those two questions, for the first time ever, are really becoming, now we're still at the beginning of this transition phase, which may last another 100, 200 years, who knows, but we are in a transition where for the first time ever, we don't need each other, and now we get to choose. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I think it hopefully will give people food for thought.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, I think that it falls back onto knowing yourself and communication.
Yeah. Emotional awareness. Yeah. I mean, emotional awareness. Like, am I getting married just because my parents got married, or am I getting married because my heart is yearning to know love at this kind of level? And having that emotional awareness, and like you said a couple times, being able to connect to it in your body is a very important practice that's needed in modern society, because we're so go, 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 and it's very easy to lose that. I mean, it's kind of this quarantine thing has kind of brought people back to it to some degree, I think.
Lots of babies and divorces through quarantine.
Who knows? It'd be interesting to see the stats, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's true. I think that I know for myself, especially based on where I came from, what I did, the job I had, and what I was subjected to. Subjected sounds like a wrong word. What I had to deal with.
Yeah.
I shut down. I didn't even know what it was like to feel my body. Like, I remember one of the first practices that I did to learn how to feel my emotional body was every hour an alarm went off, and I had to like stop, put my hand on my heart and go, how am I feeling? Like, what is the emotion I have right now? And I didn't know. Like, I was like, I mean, that might surprise people. People might relate to that, but it took a while for me to understand, what that was, how to access it, what put me into sort of a more anxious masculine state, and what put me into the more feminine flow, or
Mm,
feminine, I say flow, but it doesn't sound like that's exactly the right word, but a more feminine, calm,
mm.
uh, sort of space. And it was very interesting. And so I'm practicing that myself.
Yes.
So that leads to practices. What
Mm.
are those practices that we
Yeah.
each can have?
Yeah. So I'll just give one like 10-minute practice for, so if you have a yoga mat or you do some kind of workout in the morning or every day, I would make sure to have a mat or a sheepskin or something that you can, kind of do some floor work on.
Mhm.
And music's always great. So let's say you pick a little playlist, 2 or 3 songs, and you move your body in a way, only in the way. So most women still are very linear in their exercise, right? Even yoga, even like go to a hatha yoga class, it's very linear, right? Sun salutation, it's all very, very rigid, very linear. Kundalini, same thing. I practiced Kundalini a long time. So what you do is you go non-linear for 10 minutes, where all that matters is it feels good to move this part of your body this way.
Mm.
So I'll make it super simple. You take an inhale, you take a 360-degree inhale in, and then move your body on the exhale in a way that feels really good. So maybe it's your arm, maybe it's your leg, maybe your neck, maybe your hips, and it's a non-linear movement for about 10 minutes, 3 songs, just letting the music kind of, and feel like, oh, this feels good. Like my arm feels good. And you amplify the feeling of enjoyment and pleasure in your own body while you're doing this. So you literally bring your awareness to how good it feels to move your body, to have a body, to feel it. And then if you want to do a little bit more advanced work in that, you could connect to that part of your heart that yearns for the deepest love. And you combine those two things. And so you have this movement of pleasure while feeling the emotional experience of yearning to be known or seen or owned, or, you know what I mean? Whatever it is that your heart is wanting.
Mhm.
And if you do that 10 minutes, oftentimes women will find that a lot of emotions will come out, just stuff gets stuck in the body. And once you start to move the body in a non-linear way, things just bubble up.
Mm.
So let's just start there. And, if we want to go to another level, we can talk again, but that's for women.
I
Feel cool?
will do this behind closed doors.
Yeah, make sound, like, look, literally, like, it's again more. So make sound. It's a way to like celebrate everything that's just energy and motion and feeling.
Yeah.
It's a way to celebrate that.
I did a little mini 15-minute class that was, you've heard of Kinergy, then maybe, that Julianne Hough created.
No, I have not. But
It
does it sound like this?
kind of sounds like that, where you're moving your body to music and to maybe the elements a little bit more, like connecting with fire, connecting with earth.
Yeah.
And so I did it, and I, did a little post afterwards, and I was like, it just kind of felt good to not be so structured, like, because I'm extremely regimented with my workouts. It's like, I'm going to do 30 20 10, I'm going to do good morning. I mean, it's super, and it's weights, and but it was nice to have like no rules for my body, no rules for the feeling, no rules for how it flowed.
Yeah. So the only thing that matters is pleasure.
Okay.
You keep moving. You don't stop moving. You keep moving, but you just move in a way that feels good and has no linear sort of thing to it.
Okay.
And it's really important, just hormonally, because the more rigid our workouts, men or women, the more hormones, the more testosterone we create, the more growth hormone we create, right? So this is true for men and women. So you want things to be flowy, just to balance estrogen, all of that stuff. None of that's wrong. It's good to have both. And then the second piece that's super easy, if you can't do that on a day, then do something that feels pleasurable, like take a bath, or if you have a saltwater pool, like lay in your saltwater pool or something like that, or a walk. It just has to feel pleasurable. Glass of wine, piece of chocolate, whatever feels really good. So it's the pleasure amplification.
Okay.
For men, what the practice I would give men is, it's called an ego eradicator. It's a Kundalini practice. And I'll have Jen send you a link if they want to like just link to it. If you could say, and it's a breath of fire. So there's a breath of fire through the navel, and there's a very sort of rigid, like pose that they take, and they ground and they open up the center column of their body with breath. And it's very active and very strenuous, but it's 3 to 5 minutes, and it totally changes their brain chemistry. It's very, very grounding and very enlivening. I would start there for men. So if you notice, the men's practice had angular rigidity to it, right? And sort of force. And the women's practice had real flow and pleasure to it. And, and then you can switch. I teach men how to do the nonlinear movement too, and that works well. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I'm just like so happy to be able to learn from you and share this information with other people, to take subjects that are so off limits and I don't know, just off limits for it, just a comfort zone, and just make them comfortable. Make it comfortable, because if it's more comfortable in the public arena, it will hopefully become more in the private as well, where there's vulnerability involved and feelings. And at the end of the day, ultimately, it's hopefully going to create more love, more connection.
Right. That would be my hope, is that this is all just about like more love.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Danica. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.